Today, Iraqi forces are taking the fight directly to ISIS. The Iraqi government launched a new offensive to retake the Anbar province, where extremists captured the capital of Ramadi earlier this month.
The move comes days after U.S. Defense Secretary Ash Carter blasted Iraqi forces for showing no will to fight. Our Holly Williams has covered ISIS extensively and has more on this new military operation.
Parts of Anbar province have now been under ISIS control for well over a year, and thousands of people continue to flee following the fall of the provincial capital Ramadi earlier this month. ISIS attacked Ramadi with a wave of suicide, car and truck bombs, and soldiers from the Iraqi army fled, allowing the extremists to capture some of their weapons. That drew sharp criticism from the U.S. Secretary of Defense Ash Carter, who said on Sunday that the Iraqi forces lack the will to fight. Now, Iraq's Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi hit back at Secretary Carter, saying he had the wrong information and optimistically claiming that Iraqi forces could retake Ramadi within just a few days. To do so, he's deployed Iraq's Shiite Muslim militias. They've proven more effective against ISIS than the Iraqi army, but they're also notoriously brutal, and they're accused of murdering Sunni Muslim civilians. So the involvement of the Shiite militias in this new offensive in Anbar province could simply serve to fuel Iraq's violent religious tensions. Megan Elaine.
Joining us now from Washington is senior national security analyst Juan Zarate. Juan, after hearing concerns voiced by U.S. military officials about the adequacy of Iraqi forces, how serious is this war of words?
Well, it's fairly serious. What you have is an expression of lack of faith or confidence by the U.S. Defense Secretary in the fighting will and capacity of the Iraqi forces. At the same time, you have the Iraqis shooting back and saying that they were facing an onslaught of ISIS forces without adequate U.S. support. And so what you see is an open fissure between two key allies at a time when we need to be fighting the Islamic State in concert. And I think it's a reflection of frustration. It's a reflection of where we are in the fight against ISIS. And I think from the American standpoint, a real question as to whether or not we have the adequate trained proxy forces on the ground to actually take ground back and territory back from the Islamic State. And I think the Secretary is reflecting that frustration.
Juan, do you think this new offensive will make a difference in the region?
Well, the Iraqis clearly had to announce something. They realized this was a major setback to them, not just tactically, but strategically and psychologically. And so they had to announce something. Whether or not they're going to be able to cobble together their forces in addition to paramilitary forces from Sunni and Shia militias is to be seen. But they clearly have to change the momentum and the perception that the Islamic State is on the march. Keep in mind that the Islamic State has reinforced their position in Ramadi, trying to connect their position with Fallujah, the city they still hold in Anbar, and they continue to hold Mosul, the second largest city in Iraq. And so regardless of what happens next, the Iraqis have to demonstrate that they can take the offensive, they can take territory back, and they can put the Islamic State on their heels. To date, that hasn't really happened on a consistent basis, and perhaps this announcement and, frankly, the loss of Ramadi will be a wake-up call for everybody.
You know, Juan, as you were speaking, I was just thinking, I'm curious, does ISIS pay attention to the statements of the United States Defense Secretary? In other words, when Ash Carter says that he does not have confidence necessarily that there is that willingness to fight, is that something that ISIS would know about, would pay attention to? Absolutely.
They pay attention to everything we say and do. Keep in mind, we just saw the library of bin Laden, where he was reading everything from Woodward to Chomsky. Our enemies read and see everything that we do, and we have to keep that in mind, obviously, with what we say publicly, at least U.S. officials. And so they will take that as a sign that there is stress in their enemy forces. And I think one of the things that's important from a U.S. and Iraqi standpoint is that we demonstrate that we are still fighting on a unified front, that we're able to tactically respond, and that the Iraqis can actually take back and hold territory. Again, the Iraqis have not demonstrated an ability to do that on a consistent basis. And if we are ultimately to degrade and defeat ISIS, which is our stated strategy, we're going to have to make sure that the Iraq portion of the strategy works.
All right, Juan Zarate in Washington for us. Thank you.
Thank you.